What's going on, everyone? So a couple weeks back, I sent this into MSI. It was a busted PCIe, something like that. Something wrong with the board. And I sent it in, and they repaired it, no questions asked, and sent it back. It was a 2-week process. I had to call them once to get the tracking number. It was pretty seamless, and I was really surprised, and it got me thinking about all these years I've been dealing with Asus. Now, of course, before we get into Asus versus MSI versus all these other brands, MSI also has had a history of quite a lot of problems. So I'm not using them as the shining star, pun intended, I guess. But this experience was seamless, easy to do. I'm sure people have had RMA troubles with them before, but what I'm saying is that I sent a product out and I just got it back, no questions asked. It was in the warranty window, and I'm very happy about it. Now, I'm a sucker for aesthetics, and I've always purchased Asus boards, dating all the way back to like the 2010 era. I've had everything from the X58 Rampage, X79, X99, all the way up until X299. And then my last board was a Z790, and I finally switched over to an ASRock board, but I'll get into that a little bit later. And I just want to start with, I'm a hardcore fan, right? I've been using their products for a long time. And every PC I built for a customer, if you're new to this channel, that's what I've been doing since around 2012, is just selling PCs locally here. And a lot of them, not every single one of them, but a lot of them were almost always Asus boards. A lot of like Asus Prime budget boards. And then if they wanted like custom water cooling, we'd go up to like more expensive stuff. Now, as time went on, I would get customers kind of come back to me with these little weird issues, mostly always software related stuff, Windows software, like Armory Crate having issues. And I hear you guys, the ones that are going to say it already. Don't install Armory Crate, don't install any of the Asus software. And to that I'm going to say, well then what's the point of buying the board, right? I know you can buy or have like Signal RGB or all these open source things going, and for you latency dudes, totally understand that too. I pretty much never ran any of that software. I would try to get as much of my PC RGB to turn white and then never leave it again, or I'll uninstall the app. So for ease of use, I really thought that Asus was the best for my customers and for myself, being biased of course. But when I switched about 6 months ago to the ASRock board that I currently have, I started to realize that I never have these weird update things I need to do. There's never any like conflicting software problems or firmware issues. And that was something I would run into on the Asus board a lot. And I had a lot of customers too that would just never open Armory Crate and never update that stuff, and they would update Windows normally, and then eventually there would be some kind of a conflict between Armory Crate and the Windows version or something like that. It would break their RGB, and then it was like either major issues came of it and we had to reinstall using an uninstall tool. That's right, Asus Armory Crate has an uninstall tool so you can reinstall it to fix all your issues. Or we'd have to just like completely wipe it, or they would just leave their RGB going crazy, and I don't know. So over all these years, I've sold over 500 computers, probably more than that. A majority of them being Asus. I kind of made this excuse that like, all these problems are just happening because, I don't know, a majority of them are Asus. But I did sell other brands. I sold, maybe 25 ASRock, 25 MSI, who knows, maybe even more. And I would never really hear back from those. I did hear back from the Gigabyte people a lot of times about RGB issues, mostly with Fusion, not opening, not starting, that kind of stuff. But with the Asus boards, it was always like some software thing causing like Windows corruption or weird problems that I just didn't see on a majority of the other brands. The other thing I want to talk about is the RMA system that they have set up. It's fundamentally broken. Unfortunately, we cannot process your request. Currently, Asus in the USA, Canada. This board is from the United States. This is a Newegg board. Just getting to start an RMA can be quite a process. You definitely have to have the receipt. You cannot buy like used hardware like I had explained with the MSI board and not have proof of purchase. That's something that they need, which in fairness, a lot of companies do require that these days. The other thing too is that I did find myself, and I don't know again if this is because I was purchasing more Asus boards I did find myself sending them out more often. I didn't have to replace tons of boards. We're not talking like 100 RMAs or anything, but I did RMA somewhere around 20, 25 motherboards to Asus over the years. And every time I would RMA a board, not only would I get a used board back that was never in the shape that the board that went out was, it just took forever. It would take months sometimes. I had a Z69 or sorry, Z170 going way back to Skylake that took, I think it was like 3 months. I sent it out in the beginning of the summer of like 2016, and I got it back around, I don't know, I want to say like September or something like that. And by then, the person who I was RMAing it for just bought a whole new platform. I myself actually RMA'd a few of my Z790 boards. I had a couple bad ones back to back. One of them had a memory slot issue. The other one just like wouldn't post. It was a lot of problems. I actually have an older video. One of my earlier videos on the channel was rebuilding my jumping from Ryzen back to Intel on the 13th gen, and all of the problems that I ran into with this Asus board that I was running. I did finally get a good board, but it was such a long process to troubleshoot all the issues I was having, which, by the way, some of those Intel stability issues I feel like are kind of baked into the problem that I was having as well, because I was having stuttering and all these weird things on the board. Since I switched to ASRock, my problems have been nothing. I haven't even seen a single blue screen, knock on wood, like, and none of the issues I used to get on the Asus board are coming up so far. So I've been very happy with ASRock, and I literally, like, you know, I've never really, I don't know, I don't really use ASRock that much. I know that the Steel series has been pretty good. Shout out to Tech Yes City over there, Brian. I know he's like sponsored by them and kind of always flaunts their hardware, but I've always just looked at them as a sister company to Asus, kind of like a knockoff Asus. And Gigabyte too, because like, look at Gigabyte, you get all the birds and stuff on there. What other brand uses a bird? Asus ROG Strix, right? So I feel like every other company's trying to play like catch up design wise with Asus, and that was always why I was like so allured to their products. They, you know, they have a very good looking product, but that also has been falling apart lately. You know, after the Gamers Nexus video, back when the AM5 boards were burning up, when he was showing off one of the boards that had like the gamer logo on it and the little Pac-Man and all that stuff, I started to look at it and I was like, man, all of these Asus boards are just plastered with like gamer, 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 gamer. Now, this ASRock board, I'll show you guys on the screen, is just straight up silver, just sexy as hell. This is kind of like the adult stuff that I want. I realize that there's a market for kids, but I feel like a lot of those kids have grown up now and they don't really want gamer all over everything. Like, why do you need gamer written 100 times on the board and literally, you know, baked into the PCB? One of the last reasons I stopped purchasing Asus is mostly because of the community. I can go into like Reddit or Facebook groups for any other brand and have a pretty legit conversation about like a problem or issue that I'm facing. Whereas when I would go to the Asus community, it became more and more toxic. It was like, oh, you don't know this, or even at times having the admins of these groups respond sarcastically to me. One of them in particular, a while ago, I made a suggestion. This was about a year ago, way before the stability issues, where I said, I suggest you guys make a one-click undervolting feature, and somebody from Asus pretty much made fun of me. I posted it up in a video back when the Asus AM5 boards were burning up. I had made a video about that whole situation, and I posted that in the video. One of the guys, I'm not going to mention his name, I'm sure many of you know who he is, was kind of like sarcastically calling me an idiot, saying that already exists. Now, what this Asus rep was actually referring to when I was talking about the one-click undervolt option, which they don't have in the BIOS, was the enforce all limits 90C power thing that we've been all discussing recently because of the Intel stability issues, you know, the 253 watts, PL1, PL2. He was referring to this one little drop down tab where you can enforce 90C, and he's saying that that's an undervolt. And I was like, that's not an undervolt. That's just literally setting your CPU not to go over 90C. Now, it was arguments like this that just made me so turned off about the product. And then not only that, what other company can launch product after product like back to back to back to back? They launch so many products, it's ridiculous. Like every week sometimes I'll see like 5 new products, right? How can you expect a company to support all of those products, right? For an example, I'll just use ASRock, right? ASRock, they make motherboards. They make a couple other things too, some GPUs, but for the most part, they stick to the few things that they make. EVGA was kind of the same way. Asus went from making a couple things to basically the entire computer other than the RAM. They do not make NVMEs as far as I know at this time, but I'm sure in probably due time you'll see RAM and NVMe SSDs coming too. But basically, they make everything in the computer, everything outside of the computer. For freaking Christ's sake, they work with IKEA and make like furniture. It's like almost too much. And how are you going to be a company and support all of these different things long term? I don't think you can possibly do that. I think it's a bad design, and this is why Gamers Nexus is running into the issues with the ROG Ally. You know, that whole entire mess up that they had happen there is because they're not doing a good job at supporting their products. Now, I'm not one of those people who wants to see a company go under or whatever, and Asus most certainly is not going to go under. They are a $11 billion company, so they're doing pretty well, and they are doing some things very well. That being said, I do hope things like this, like the Asus video that Steve just put out with the whole ROG Ally, I do hope that these things actually correct the issues that they've been facing for a while now. This is kind of stuff that does need to happen in the industry. I know that the average consumer just buying this stuff isn't going to really pay too much attention to it. It's mostly like you and I who watch these kind of videos, and we're really focused on, you know, the community and you know, how everything's going. So as of a year ago, I banned Asus, and I said I'm not going to be selling Asus products anymore or using them in my own personal rigs, and still to this day, that ban continues, and I just wanted to make a video about it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Drop a like, sub, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in another video.